This is gonna be a good day. You are very fine. Thank you so much for this lovely cup of coffee. All right, you guys, come on, let's go. Your beautiful cup of coffee, you're so lovable. Good morning, all of you beautiful people watching this morning. I wanted to welcome you to the first session of Hearing His Heartbeat. So what even is that? Great question. So this all kind of started for me 10 years ago when I started working with girls in Cincinnati, and I started recognizing when I was listening to them, high school and college girls, talk about their relationship with God, it started to sound kind of familiar to a journey that I went through when I was also in high school. So when I was in freshman year coming into high school, I wouldn't have been able to put this on words for myself. But I realized that I was kind of looking at God like he was this God in a cell phone tower, and I was a receiver. And I was trying so hard to figure out what God was saying. And then I felt like I could never quite get it. I never knew if it was my own voice and just my own thoughts talking, or if it was actually God. And then if it was God, what do I even do with that? And then sometimes I would feel like this hamster on the wheel of I should do the right thing. And actually, I just stopped praying entirely because I just got too stressed out by it, right? And I always thought that I was the only one. And then I started listening to all of you guys, and I realized I'm not the only one. And guess what? You're not the only one either, because here's the thing. People have been asking these kind of questions throughout all of history. It's called discernment of spirits. How do you know God's voice and what it sounds like? For me, what happened is I went on a retreat when I was 15, and I realized that I experienced Jesus in such a tangible way where he became so real and alive. And I noticed something the week I came back. I had such a radical, vibrant experience of him and who he was. And then, so close, I came back to my daily life and I was sitting in biology class and I was doodling on the front page of my notebook. And I remember thinking, the way that Jesus looks at me, the way that I feel like Jesus looks at my life and the way that God looks at my life, they feel like two different things. And this was the difference. I felt like when God looked at my life, so many things that I should do to make sure that I was doing things for God. And then when Jesus looked at my life, I felt free. And it was the best feeling in the whole world. And I started to notice that difference of why is it that when Jesus looks at me, it's different than the way God looks at me? Aren't they the same? And it set me on this journey that has kind of stayed with me for a long time of trying to figure out, when Jesus looks at me, what is the difference? When I start to listen to Jesus in the gospel, what was he teaching me about God that I didn't know before? You know what started to change? Me. Because I realized when I felt this faraway God talking to me, it was usually things that I needed to do, or things that I needed to be. And I didn't realize this, but there was all these expectations that were kind of woven in there, that they just started to intercept. And I couldn't hear God clearly. But when I started listening to the voice of Jesus, what I realized is when he spoke to me, I felt peaceful. And I felt stronger inside of me. I actually felt like I could open the eyes of my soul up more and just let him talk to me. And I felt whole. That is huge when you're talking about your relationship with Jesus, because you know what happens to all of us girls? We all want to know. We all want to know the voice of God, because there's something so innately in us as those little radio antennas that we're trying to figure out, where is he? Because I want him. And if you've had any sort of an experience of God before, you know he's good, but then we have all these wonky signals that get in the way of us trying to figure out, what does God's voice sound like? Here's what Hearing His Heartbeats does, is taking the past 15 years for me, since I had that moment with Jesus, I started to notice patterns inside of me of what does Jesus' voice sound like, but then also what does the enemy's voice sound like? Taking also the expert in this, St. Ignatius of Loyola, in the Catholic Church. He has a whole discernment of spirits theology that we also kind of brought into the mix. And then the advice of a lot of really, really holy people. I kind of wanted to mix that into one little video series. And then this year for Lent, every Sunday, we're going to put out one video on what does God's voice sound like and what does it not. So for example, for today's little takeaway, sometimes we can feel like God's voice has kind of secretly underneath it this hidden like mother gothel critic kind of tone, where it's like, oh, you're such a good girl, but never come out of the towel or Rapunzel, right? And there's like this, sometimes we can feel like God's this critic, when actually God is never speaking in discouragement, ever, meaning he can never be the critic. But God also always speaks as a coach. Those little things can change your life, and we've got a ton of those little things ready for you in these videos. So if you're somebody who you think would enjoy sitting Sunday morning in Lent, kind of taking your prayer more seriously, discerning what does God's voice sound like and what does it not, and if you want a cute little like calendar page for every week that you can like fill in where's God's voice for your life and where's God's voice not in your life, you might enjoy subscribing to Hearing His Heartbeats, because I would love to have coffee with you in the morning, and your soul deserves to know that you can be free. We love you lots. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.